Thank you so much. It is indeed a pleasure to be here and to be part of such
Yes.
a inspiring conference as this one. And I thoroughly enjoyed Annie's presentation and the fun session, although it did make me feel a little nervous at times. And I'd like to start off by thanking the World Mental Health Congress for conducting an event of this nature, because all the more today mental health is an issue that needs to be addressed with a lot of attention and respect. So moving on to my session, why connect resilience to happiness? I hope before I start, I hope I'm loud and clear. Can we
Yes.
have a, yeah? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So why connect resilience to happiness? Well, some of you may have heard Ingrid Patel-Lee in her TED Talk, Where Joy Hides and How to Find It. In her book, Joyful, The Power of Ordinary Things to Create Extraordinary Happiness, she has conveyed how joy is a form of resilience. What happens many a time is we tend to focus on happiness to such an extent that we forget to enjoy the smaller moments that give us tremendous joy. Happiness, if we are to look at from a broader perspective, is an evaluation of how we feel about life. It could be about our relationships. It could be about how our professional life is making progress. Is it the desirable manner that the progress is going on? But joy is simpler and more immediate. So how does or how can we strengthen our resilience so that we are able to achieve greater happiness? The first thing is that it's interesting because resilient people are known to lead happier and more successful lives. If we are to consider exactly how that can work out in our favor, the first thing what I've noticed about resilient people is that they do not hesitate to seek support. Talking of resilient people, just a couple of days back, a very close friend of mine who had been through tremendous trauma in childhood and early adulthood was finding it extremely difficult to cope with her life. And despite having taken help before, she realized she needs to take a lot more help. And for that, she unhesitantly has reached out, which I think is very, very commendable. Considering the trauma that she has been through, she's extremely lively, vibrant, and enthusiastic about her life. So they are very, very vibrant, and they do not hesitate to reach out and get the support they need. The second one is that they realize that challenges are just a part of life. Because certain times when we are going through any kind of challenge, in fact, I have mentioned this incident several times in my webinars before as well, but I think this is also an example which we all can probably reflect because it was so real. A couple of years ago, my family and I, we were part of the floods in India, in Kerala. And at that point of time, while the floods were happening, we had to evacuate our home in 15 minutes. My father was critically ill. I think what we all realized is, yes, we need to make the best out of the situation. Get my dad the help he requires, evacuate, make sure everyone is evacuated safely. Now, whether the house might crumble, whether we might be not be able to probably find a very comfortable place to stay for the night, we will look at that when it comes. But what is most immediate is what we needed to see. And at the same time, I think the concern was, let's see what we can do, rather than thinking that, oh my goodness, God alone knows how long this ordeal is going to be. I'm sure many of you will have incidences in your life which actually taught you that a lot of situations which are unpleasant are situations that need not always be an ordeal for life. The third thing is to make healthy choices. Resilient people are known to be very, very careful about how they lead their life. They would definitely like to take care about how well they eat. What about their exercise regime? Do they meditate? Do they do yoga? In fact, this wonderful friend of mine, whom I gave you all as an example of resilience, she's someone who does all of this. So that is another example, that is making healthy choices. The fourth one is remembering to laugh. Whenever I'm out with her, I always have a great time because she makes me laugh a lot. And I think that is the reflection of how much she enjoys her life and every moment in her life. The next one is about being nice to others. Yes, resilient people are known to be a lot more concerned about how they approach people, about how friendly they are. Do they make others feel comfortable? Because they are not very much concerned about how the reaction may be, and which I think helps in their favor, because when their idea is to be pleasant and they are not particularly worried in case someone doesn't reply to them with a good morning, I think it works in their favor. The next one is to ensure that whatever happens, we keep facing the situation. I think, like very much related to the earlier point, we keep facing the situation and make the best of the situation, taking care to see how it can be handled most effectively. The next one is not to make the same mistake again. I think that is also a wise lesson that the resilient people would be very, very careful to note. You make a mistake, absolutely fine. You make another mistake similar to that, it happens. But the third time, if we are going to repeat the mistake, I think probably we need to look at the situation a little more closer so that we can avoid it the next time. One more thing I think I would like to focus on as far as resilient people are concerned is they would always like to look at the bright side. Now, sometimes people can get confused and consider that as, is it toxic positivity? Well, no, it isn't. Because I think it is not about ignoring that there are challenges in the situation, because they are definitely considering the challenges, taking that into account. At the same time, looking at the situation positively so that they are able to take the right actions so that the outcome is desirable and successful. So I think that is something which is definitely noted about people who are resilient. And resilient, I admit, it's not an easy trait for any of us to learn from or to get into that desired state of resilience. It requires work, it requires effort, and it requires awareness of what are the advantages we have and what are the areas we need to improve on. From my own personal lessons, if I am to discuss them, I think the first lesson that I have come to realize that can make someone more resilient is the importance of self-belief. In fact, until my early adulthood, I have to admit that my self-belief was not very strong. Despite having a very, very encouraging family environment, and especially with the fact that my dad was very, very motivating, I took some time to develop a certain self-belief in myself. And I admit that was the first step to becoming more resilient as far as facing life and its challenges are. The next one, I would call it, is about learning from my parents. In fact, I think during the session I had mentioned on how we can probably cultivate resilience in children. So I think here I'm actually talking briefly about my own experience here. So I would say the second one is what I have come to understand is how much composure are we able to have when we face a situation? In fact, when my brother was less than a year old, my parents went through, I say my parents because I was quite small. So I wasn't really very much aware of what was happening, nor was I really aware of how critical his condition was. When my brother was severely ill, in fact, doctors had given up hope and they had told my mother that please pray because there is nothing more we can do for your baby. But what I really remember about that time is that they were, of course, very, very silent. And apart from that, they were ensuring that everything was as usual at home, and they were taking a lot of care to see that also I was not getting very worried about the situation. And I think looking back today, I've got two children. In fact, both of them are adults. And when I look back, I think it must have required a lot of composure and resilience on my parents, especially my mom, who used to go every day in the morning and be with my baby brother in the hospital. How much it would have taken a toll on her. But I think it was a reflection of their strength and, of course, their belief that hopefully things should work out fine. So I think that was a lesson for me as far as resilience goes, learning from my parents. The next thing is about practicing gratitude. That's also another element I have to credit my loving parents for. Because always I would see that they're forever feeling grateful about what they have, especially my dad. My dad started his business when he was in his mid 30s, and both of my brother and I, we were school going children by the time. And I think for 3 years he was really struggling to make sure that the business picks up. And he would have very odd times when he would come home. Sometimes it would be 4 in the morning because he would be going to ships and ensuring that their equipments were working and they are moving forward. So whenever he would come home, whether it was late in the night or whether it was early in the morning, he would always be smiling. And his smile was so infectious that as children, I never had a clue on how much he would have been going through because he was always smiling. And the first thing he would say is, yes, how was your day? As though he was walking in the park the whole day. And I think in terms of his gratefulness about what he was going through is definitely something very inspiring because he would always say even when he was working during those times, he would always talk about how grateful he is for what he has. Of course, the fact is we went for a small holiday after 3 years when my dad started business. But of course, I think that would be another story. So I think practicing gratitude here is also something which helps us become more resilient. And I know it might be a very touchy topic here, but I would also like to mention, I think the kind of spirituality that we believe in also enables us to be more resilient. Now, I'm not talking about religion when I'm talking about spirituality. Yeah. I'm just talking about how much in sync are we in terms of our thoughts, our actions, and our behavior? I would like all of you to please just think about that for a moment. Maybe after today's session, you could think about it. Is it in sync? Or do you find yourself that perhaps whatever we have learned, we are not really implementing it to ensure that we make the best of our lives and help others too in the process? So I think when it comes to spirituality, I think the more we are following it through our actions and words and practices, I think the more resilient we become. In fact, when I look at my own life, and once again, when I look at my parents' life, they've always been those who have just gone out of their way quietly and done what they can, not expecting anything from those whom they help or from anybody else as well. And I think the more that we are able to cultivate that kind of a compassion and that kind of a uniformity when it comes to thoughts, actions, and behavior, it builds our resilience and at the same time helps us to help others better too. The next one is what I would like to talk about is learning self-control. As a child, that was something which I do admit I was not very happy about. Because even much later, when my dad's business had started prospering, whenever there was something that was to be bought, there were several questions raised to me. Why do I require it? Is it important? And reasons such as my friends have it, no, they were not considered good enough reasons. So I think how we exactly look at what we need, is it important? Now, I think that also teaches us to have better self-control. And what that will also enable us is to help us become more resilient than what we are. Now, if we are to look at some of the tips in so that we are able to improve our resilience is putting situations in objective perspective. Now, several of you might be facing tremendous challenges in your lives. At this point of your life, what I would like to request you is look at it as objectively as possible and see what is the best that you can do to face it. It may be something that you are able to do. You might even look out for support, like I mentioned. You would be surprised at how much support can be coming forward from unexpected ways and from people. So please, the second thing is how can we foster, beliefs, our existing beliefs? As far as I'm concerned, a few years ago, I had been through a very traumatic personal life crisis. I call it traumatic because I started realizing that unless I tackle the crisis head on, it's definitely going to start affecting my, not just my psychological health, but also my physical health. And that is when I was able to get into a mode of the desired belief that would help me move forward. Next thing is about connecting with resilient people. I'm sure each one of you have got those in your family and even friends who are examples of resilience. Be connected to them. They may not even be your friends, but they are definitely those who will inspire you to do better and to become better. And like I said, to help you, not just help yourself, but to help others too in your own way. Do something meaningful. Absolutely. I think one way to build up resilience is by doing things which are meaningful, which have a certain sense of purpose. Because sometimes you might think that, oh, what is there? There's nothing to do. And a lot of negative thoughts, when they come into your mind, think about what matters. Think about what matters to you and what you could do that can help others too in that situation. And of course, I think last but not least, I think what I would like to mention here is about taking care of yourself. Pay attention to who you are. Unfortunately, many a time people get confused about arrogance when it comes to taking care of yourself. Not at all. When you're able to respect and love yourself like the way you love others and respect others, let me tell you, you're going to feel a lot more confident about taking care of yourself and valuing what your needs are, just like how you would value others' needs. So, why do we need to connect resilience to happiness? Because it is a way of life so that we are able to achieve greater satisfaction, fulfillment, personal and professional progress in life. Now, before I conclude and before we move on to the Q&A, I would like to request all of you to try one activity because we don't have much time. I would not like to take up the time of the next speaker. But please, when you go back after the session, I would like you to write a letter addressed by someone in your life who loves and respects you the most. I will repeat. When you conclude today's event, I would love to see you prepare a letter addressed to you. Please remember, you will be writing the letter, but it will be addressed to you from someone who loves and respects you the most in your life. Now, I'm actually supposed to give the explanation after you all write the letter, but since we don't have time, I'd like to just mention whatever you write in that letter, it could be maybe from your parents, it could be from your grandparents, it could even be someone who's not alive. But what you write in that letter is a reflection of your self-belief today. And if you think in that letter it's not probably as motivating as possible, think about how you can move forward, because resilience is the key to greater happiness. Thank you so much.